Hey there, it's Lara here from astrologymaven.com, and I'm here with your weekly horoscope video. So welcome, thanks for being here. If this is your first time here, I really appreciate you being here. I hope you stick around. I hope you subscribe and let me know what you think. And if you're a regular, you know I appreciate you. So we are, as I'm recording this, which is on Tuesday the 25th, on the precipice of that eclipse that we talked about in last week's video, which is happening tomorrow early in the morning, around 7:15 or so, about 7:13 a.m. Eastern time at 5 degrees Sagittarius on the 26th of May, 2021. So I have a funny story. You might have seen me say something about this on Facebook or Instagram earlier today, but it was just a long weekend here, Victoria Day weekend, and we went to our camp. And for those of you who aren't from around here, you might know that as a cottage or a lake house or something like that. But it's not as fancy as that makes it sound, right? Anyway, so we're at the lake. We have a little place there, and it is a place that I absolutely feel at peace, with the world. And so we were there for the long weekend. It's not too far away from, less than a couple hours away from where we live. And I lose complete track of time there. Often I actually slept in super late one day, which is very unlike me. And I woke up thinking that it was early in the morning, and it was like 10:45, and I was all disoriented. But the whole weekend, I was thinking that the eclipse was on Monday for some reason. And it's just like I was in a complete time warp. And then this morning I realized, I was chuckling to myself because I realized the eclipse is actually Wednesday, not Monday. And I knew that, of course. I did a video on it last week. But, I was just, like I said, in a time warp. And eclipses can kind of have that effect. They are kind of like a wormhole, right? This weird time warp that happens where we have like, sort of a, like karma calls, or we have this reset button where things speed up really quickly. Time just seems to bend in a way. So that's what happened to me. And so if you have not seen the video from last week where we talked in depth about the eclipse, the total lunar eclipse that's happening on the 26th in Sagittarius, and what that means for you and for all of us, and I, of course, took you through all the signs. If you haven't watched that yet, then definitely go back and do that. Eclipses, like, pretty much all astrological events, are not something that, it's not like something happens in that moment, that second when the eclipse goes exact, and then it's over, right? It tends to be a buildup of an energy because remember, lunar eclipses are like full moons, but really amped up. And so we can tend to feel it building, and then it will play out after, right? After the actual event as well. So if we get to May 26th and nothing earth-shattering has happened in your life, well, a few things. A, maybe consider yourself fortunate. B, it may be that this particular eclipse is not hitting your chart in a significant, potent way. So you may see things going on in the world around you or in the lives of the people around you rather than in your own general experience. It might be a little more mild. Or it may be that it just hasn't happened yet, right? Because like I said, it's not necessarily that some event's going to happen in that specific moment in time. So I'd love to hear your eclipse stories. Let me know what's going on for you. At this moment, and I don't want to jinx it, tapping on my wooden desk here, but things are happening. Definitely things are happening for me, and I can see it, how it's playing out in the Gemini Sagittarius axis of my chart, which is the 10th and 4th houses for me. I'm a Virgo rising. But when I look back to the last eclipse that we had in this same place in the sky back in 2002, and I talked to you about the previous dates to look for in last week's video. So I'll put the link to last week's video on the eclipse below, so you can go back and listen to that if you haven't, or if you just want to revisit it. But for me, what was happening way back then in 2002 was that I had gone through teacher's college, and I commuted every day for almost 2 hours, like one way and then back at the end of the day, for that whole year from September. And then I graduated right around, it would have been right around the eclipse time, that I graduated from teacher's college, and then shortly thereafter got a full-time job teaching. So, that is what was going on in my life. And there are similar themes going on, but nothing that strikes me as quite that obvious. So I guess time will tell. Remember that we do have a solar eclipse on June 10th, right? That's the solar eclipse in Gemini. So solar eclipses are like new moons. They're more about the new beginnings. And lunar eclipses are more like full moons. They are more about when things culminate. So I don't know. Stay tuned. I mean, obviously, I'm launching a new website, as you may have heard, astrologymaven.com. Still not ready to go, but you'll be the first to know when it's ready to go. So there's that, right? And I guess that's a big thing. So similarities but differences. But in your own life, look back to that eclipse, May 26, 2002, because we had a lunar eclipse at the same degree of Sagittarius at that time. So you can look back and think about what was going on, right? But I'm not going to rehash that too much more because we talked about that a lot last week. And in this week's video, we're going to talk about Mercury retrograding in Gemini and some things connected with that. So that's where we're headed here. So stick around. Before I get there, I want to remind you that if you want to get on my mailing list and be notified when my website goes live, and you can get my free guide to working with the moon when you do that, and some other good stuff that's coming down the pipeline, then you can get on my email list by going to astrologymaven.com, and the link to that is below. So the moon is in Sagittarius. That's where the eclipse is happening, right? That total lunar eclipse. So obviously the moon is in Sagittarius. And as of Thursday evening, it will move on into Capricorn out of Sagittarius on the 27th. And then it'll move into Aquarius early Sunday, which is the 30th, and eventually Pisces on next Tuesday, June 1st. In these videos, I go Wednesday to Wednesday. That's the way I work it here. So in case this is your first time here, that's what you can expect, is a new video to come out every Wednesday. And sometimes, I may do 2 in a week. It's been a while since I've done that just because I've been so busy. And, kids at home all the time, and all of that. So it has put some boundaries. We got the old Saturn-Uranus square playing out this year, as you recall, right? So trying to make progress, but there are some obstacles that we all have to overcome. So that's where the moon is at. And then on Friday, the 28th, we've got Venus coming into a conjunction with Mercury. and at 24 degrees Gemini. There is a lot going on in Gemini right now, right? The sun is now in Gemini. So if I didn't say it before, happy birthday to Geminis out there. And there is a ton going on in Gemini. We've got Venus and Mercury and the sun now there. We've got the North Node there. And of course, the eclipses are happening on that axis, right? And so we've got Mercury coming into a conjunction at 24 degrees Gemini on Friday the 28th. And so it's like, because Mercury is about to station, Mercury's moving slower than usual, and Venus, usually moves more slowly than Gemini. But in this case, because Mercury is about to station, Venus is going to catch up to Mercury. So it's like Venus is catching up to Mercury and saying, hey, you forgot something, right? Or did you take care of this sort of thing? And then Gemini will retrograde and go take care of that unfinished business. So we're going to get more into that conversation in a minute. But generally, Venus conjuncting Mercury there, it's, this may be a moment of, or a day or two where we experience some kind of like pleasant or harmonious conversation or news or communication or information about things like finances, resources, relationships, women sometimes. And it may just be things like, getting compliments, being on the receiving end of compliments or dishing out compliments, or talking about things like beauty, design, aesthetic, or reading about those things, that sort of thing. So you may go Pinterest crazy for those couple of days or something like that. So that's what's going on there. And then the following day on the Saturday, the 29th, is when Mercury stations retrograde at 24 degrees Gemini. And Mercury will be retrograde there in Gemini until June 22nd. It will move direct on June 22nd at 16 degrees. So it's moving between 24 and 16 Gemini, right? It goes back to 16 and then will station and move forward for a third time through those same degrees, those same 7 and 8 degrees. So, or 7 to 8 degrees. So that area of our chart is getting a real sort of going over. There is revision going on there. So if you're somebody that has particular, placements around there, if you have your sun, your moon, your rising sign between 16 and 24 Gemini, or if you have, your Venus or your Mars or what have you right around there, then there's something more personal going on for you during this Mercury retrograde. And you will feel it more notably. Or if you have significant placements around between 16 and 24 of the other mutable signs as well, meaning Sagittarius, Pisces, and Virgo, because the Mercury retrograde will hit those points in your chart either by opposition or square. So you'll feel that as well. So that's what's going on in terms of the exact degrees and the dates with Mercury retrograde. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Mercury retrograde shortly. Then on Monday, the 31st, we've got the sun coming into a conjunction with the North Node at 10 degrees Gemini, right? So again, in Gemini. And of course, the sun conjuncts the North Node once a year because the sun circles, takes a year to circle the zodiac. But here we've got the sun in Gemini, and the North Node in Gemini in this case. So it's with all the stuff and the eclipses going on in Gemini, right? It's notable. So this is like sort of, it could be like a dose of motivation that happens for us, or a greater sense of like purpose, of our mission kind of thing. And we may be like sort of propelled towards the future, or really getting some enlightenment around that, or clarity around that North Node Gemini situation that's going on for us personally. or we may get like a, the sun rules leaders, rulers, authority figures. And so there may be some, some sort of karmic situation that goes on as far as that goes as well, that we may hear about or read about in the news, So, but with Mercury retrograding there in Gemini, meaning we might have to revisit some things that sort of like we might have thought we had certain things set in stone, or certain things were decided on, or what have you. And or it may be that we forgot to attend to something, or we have, like, we didn't even realize that we needed to attend to something, and we get a sudden revelation about that. So kind of like, well, I thought this is where I was going, but now maybe I'm headed in a slightly different direction, or maybe I need to take care of some details. Maybe I need to gather more information, more intel kind of thing, before I can move forward sort of full steam ahead in that Gemini area of life, right? And this Mercury retrograde is happening between eclipses. So we have the eclipse on the 26th, then we have Mercury retrograding on the 29th, and then we have the other eclipse while Mercury's retrograde on June 10th, right? So there's this Mercury retrograding right in the midst of eclipses. And so it's like Mercury's on a mission to help us really kind of like, it's like, let's nail this new beginning, right? Let's nail this new beginning that's happening in the Gemini area, and make sure that we do it right, like that we leave no stone unturned, sort of thing, and really, really take care of the details. And remember, Mercury rules Gemini. So it's like Mercury is at the top of its game, sort of thing, in Gemini. Mercury also rules Virgo, but Mercury's at home. So when it goes on this mission to sort of attend to the loose ends, then it's got all the resources that it needs to do that. It's like, if you need to fix something in your house, and you have the tools on hand to do that, so it can be done a little more easily. But because Mercury's retrograde, it may be, oh, I'm missing like the certain wrench or something, so maybe I have to borrow it from somebody, or maybe I have to go through the process of ordering it online if you're somewhere that's still in lockdown, like we are, and we can only do curbside pickup here still. We can't buy anything but essentials in a store. So something like that. The other thing I want to mention to you about retrogrades is that, which you may already know, is that retrogrades can signify some kind of like a reversal, or people from the past come back into your awareness or to your life. We may get a revisiting of past news or old news in some way, or information that we're seeing like the second time around, but it's revised, to sort of like, revisions are made to make things more accurate, that sort of thing. And first of all, I'm going to show you the chart right now before I forget, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Mercury retrograde. So here's the chart for when Mercury stations retrograde, and you can see down here, right, where we've got the Sun, the North Node, Mercury, and Venus. And you see that little RX by Mercury. That indicates that Mercury has stationed retrograde. And then if you look up at the top of the chart, you can see two things I want to draw your attention to. There's the moon and Pluto in Capricorn across from Mars in Cancer. Okay, so I want to draw your attention to that. And also, obviously, the stuff going on here in Gemini opposite Sagittarius, where we had the total lunar eclipse on Wednesday. So, okay. So, Mercury's retrograde in air signs this year. And last year it was retrograde in the earth signs. So, Mercury retrograde in the different elements has a slightly different quality. And when it's in the air signs, it may feel even more sort of true to form, meaning true to the kind of cliche of Mercury retrograde, right? When I think a lot of people who are becoming more aware of the fact that Mercury retrograde isn't just a, like an internet meme where it's like, oh, we can blame everything on Mercury retrograde, and it's not just about it's not just there to wreak havoc with our lives and our technology and our vehicle and our travel plans and all of that. It serves a very important purpose. And Mercury retrogrades 3 or 4 times every year. So it's a natural occurrence. So the more we can kind of wrap our heads around that and make friends with that concept, the better it tends to go for us, right? And we don't just malign Mercury retrograde and think that we have to stop life and, every time that Mercury retrogrades. That's unrealistic. So, but when Mercury is retrograding in the air signs, it can feel sort of more true to form in that way. So we may see and experience some communication, tech, travel glitches. Those things can definitely happen, or things pertaining to sort of to these themes, right? These air related themes are needing revising, revisiting, reevaluation, needing to be restored, needing to be rectified, reconciled, all those words that Mercury retrograde is drawing to our attention. And so, it's possible that there may be some snafus and that sort of thing, some communication breakdowns or confusion around that. And really, what Mercury retrograde, every planet retrogrades, right? Except for the luminaries, the sun and the moon don't retrograde. But every other planet retrogrades to varying degrees for varying degrees of time. And so there's a purpose for that. And in the case of Mercury retrograde, the purpose is for us to slow down. Mercury is a fast-moving planet generally. So the purpose is for us to slow down our minds, slow down our communications, rethink certain things. It wants us to make sure that we have what we need in order to move forward. Like, is this information correct? For example, does this idea need revising or revisiting? Does your vehicle need an oil change? Do you need to switch out the tires, the winter tires? Do you need new windshield washers? Do you need to check that squeak on the dryer? Do you need to be more mindful with your cell phone? And if the answer to that is yes, then maybe that's one of those things where mindlessly, like, you lose track of it, you lose it, or you it's in your back pocket and it falls in the toilet or something like that, which has happened to me. So anyway, it's like it's a It's a sign, it's a message to slow down and make sure that the details are taken care of. When you hear of things like don't sign any contracts during Mercury retrograde, well, that's ridiculous. I mean, if you can avoid it, okay, sure. But if it's something that you need to do, then it's just about read the fine print, make sure that the deal you think you're getting is really the deal you're getting. Ask all the questions. Make sure you're understanding the people that you are communicating with, and make sure that they are understanding you as well, because communication wires can get crossed at this time, right? Make sure that the email you need to send by a certain date actually sent. Make sure and to the right people. These are the kinds of things to be mindful of during Mercury retrograde. And I really do get the sense that as part of the larger eclipse picture here, there's something very significant about this Mercury retrograde in Gemini that wants to make sure we've worked out all the details to the best of our ability, and we've really we've got things set and accurate, and got all the pieces of information that we need in order to really launch that new beginning that the eclipse, the solar eclipse in Gemini is sort of hearkening in, right? And the last thing I want to mention to you, this video is going to be a little bit shorter than usual for a few reasons, because Mercury retrograde is one of those things that is a little more cut and dry in some ways than other things, right? But also just I'm a bit short on time because it was a long weekend and I'm catching up on some things and got a lot going on around here. So, but there is one more thing that I want to mention to you, and that is that Mars is approaching an opposition to Pluto. So I'm going to talk about that more in next week's video. Mars and Pluto are big energies opposing each other. And Mars is in Cancer, Pluto's in Capricorn, right? So at around noon, the same day that Mercury retrogrades, and I'm using Eastern time zone because that's my time zone, so you can adjust accordingly. So on the 29th, just prior to Mercury retrograding, the moon will oppose Mars. So the moon will be traveling through Capricorn, and it will oppose Mars in Cancer, exactly, at around 22 degrees. And then right after that, almost at the same time as Mercury is stationing retrograde, the moon will conjunct Pluto in Capricorn. So it's like this is a moment that may give us a clue, that may give us some insight into what the Mars-Pluto opposition sort of has in store, right? It is happening. This Mars-Pluto opposition is happening right between eclipses as well. So that's significant. But the moon tends to trigger like our daily lives, right? The events in our day-to-day lives. And so if we pay attention really to what's going on that day in particular, the 29th of May, then we may get some important sort of information or insight there. So I wanted to mention that to you. And the other thing that I wanted to note is that I looked back, and Mercury was also retrograde in Gemini when we had the last lunar eclipse in Sagittarius in May of 2002. So that one eclipse, I'm going to stress this again, I'm going to circle back to that one eclipse that we had in May 2002, May 26th it was, 2002, is very, very similar to in many ways, not in all ways, but in many ways, similar to the one that we are having now. In Sagittarius, I might have said eclipse in Gemini. I meant the total lunar eclipse in Sagittarius on the 26th, very similar to the one in May 2002. So that may really give you a clue as to what this is all about, right? All right, so before I take it through the signs and address Mercury retrograde through the signs, then I'm just going to give you a few quick questions that you may want to reflect on in regard to this Mercury retrograde for yourself. So just 3 questions today. So first one is, what details need to be taken care of, or what loose ends need to be tied up before I can, really sort of move on in the Gemini area of life, before I can really move forward to that, to what the future has in store, right? With the North Node in Gemini there. What details need to be tended to in the Gemini area of the chart? So think about that. And if you don't know the Gemini area of the chart, I'm about to get to that, so hang tight. Second question, how is my understanding of things, either Gemini related or in the house that Gemini rules, and it may involve the Sagittarius house across the sky too, but how is my understanding of things changing in some way? And taking it back to the first question, what is needing revising as a result? And then that last question, which I sort of alluded to earlier, but is there information that needs clarification? Like, do I need to get something clarified by another person, another group of people, an organization, something like that? Or am I the one who needs to do the clarifying, right? Ask questions. Mercury is in Gemini, like the most curious. So ask questions. And don't be surprised if people are asking you a lot of questions around this time as well. So, be prepared for that. And here's the thing. If people ask you questions that you don't know the answer to right now, it's okay. Like, don't pretend you know the answer. Just let them know that you need to do more thinking on that, or you need to dig up some more information on that. You need to clarify a few things before you give them the answer, or you may direct them to someone else who may be better able to answer their question. That kind of thing is important as well. So let's take it through the signs now, and I'm going to address Mercury retrograde through the signs, and obviously keeping in mind all the context of what I've already said in the video. And I will put timestamps for you so that you can jump to your sign more quickly. Sometimes it takes me a minute, so I usually put the video up and then I go back and do the timestamps. So if you're watching this just before that, just be patient, and the timestamps will be there for you sooner than later. So I'm just thinking if there's anything else I want to mention to you before I launch in here. Not that I can think of. So let's begin. Well, okay. Yes, there is. Just for those of you who may not have seen one of my videos before, just so you know, first off, I'm using whole sign houses here. So if you know your chart in whole sign, that's what we're working with. And second of all, if you know your rising sign, that is what I recommend you listening to first and foremost in these general videos. But you can also listen to your sun sign and your moon sign, and for added sort of information, added layers of information. Sometimes, depending on the situation, sometimes people will resonate a lot with their sun sign, but oftentimes the rising sign will be more accurate, because in a general forecast like this, we are talking about the house, placement, and that will be accurate in whole sign depending on the rising sign. So, for example, if you're a Virgo rising, every Virgo rising, for example, has Sagittarius in the 4th house. So you see how that works. But if you know your own chart, then you know specifics, right? You know what sign, what house your sun is in, for example. And of course, you can always, if you don't know your chart, you can always connect with me or another astrologer for a reading. You can find me at Lara at astrologymaven.com. When my website gets up, you can connect with me right through there, but you can email me there. You can reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram as well right now. Or you can, go to some sort of a free site where you can put in your birth information, and you need a birth time to get your rising sign. And you can draw up your chart. So you can go to like astro.com or astroseek.com. All right, so let's launch in here. We're going to begin with Gemini, because Gemini, it's your season, you're the star of the show, and Mercury is retrograding through your 1st house if you're a Gemini rising. So what happens with Mercury retrograding through your 1st house is this, Mercury wants you to hit the pause button, to slow down, to go review the details, to make sure all your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed in relation to, yourself. So are you revising your appearance in some way? 1st house is about our appearance, our physical vitality. It is about how we project ourselves out into the world, how the world perceives us. The 1st house speaks to generally all areas of life because it's about us. So it can have an impact on everything else, right? So everything's going on in your sign. You've got an eclipse coming up on June 10th. You've got Mercury and Venus in your sign. You've got the North Node obviously there. And so, and the sun there right now. If you're a Gemini sun, you are experiencing your solar return. So your new year is beginning. So that could be a time when you're feeling a renewed sense of optimism or vitality, if you're a Gemini sun. And there's this energy of rethinking things when we have a retrograde. So for you may be rethinking things as they pertain to, again, your physical health, your body, your appearance, your relationships, even because the 1st house is opposite the 7th house. Your relationship to yourself, your sort of how you kind of come at the world, or how you address the world, or how the world perceives you is maybe getting a revision of some description, right? And so it's always optimal to be intentional about these things. So think about how do you need to slow down there, and maybe tap the brakes a little, and kind of get a better sense of how to move forward, right? Is there more information that you need? Are there questions you need to ask? Do things need tweaking? Do you need to rethink your style in some way? I mean, it can be as simple as that. Are you thinking about here's what I wouldn't do over this time if it can be avoided. It's like, if you're thinking about changing your appearance, like maybe you're thinking about some kind of like a plastic surgery, or a drastic change in your hair or something like that. Like maybe it's time to kind of collect the the data on that, right? And not necessarily to do it right now until after Mercury stations direct and moves on a little bit, because you may change your mind about that based on new information that you get. So in general, Gemini, I think that's quite a bit to go on for you. Mercury retrograding in your first house, right? So definitely listen to the intro and you'll get more context rather than just listening to this little snippet about your sign. All right, so we're going to move on to Taurus now. Taurus, for you, all the Gemini stuff, including the Mercury retrograde, is happening in your second house. So this is some sort of revisiting of themes around your personal resources, so your finances, material possessions, your worth, what you place value on, your sense of self-worth, what you charge for your services, potentially, if that pertains to you. It can be how you make your money, just in general. The second house is like how we use our skills and talents to get our basic needs met, right? So it often is related to our work in the world in some way. It can be about how we nurture our bodies through like things that we take in, like our food sources. So that's a possibility as well. But second house is very much about our personal resources, usually finances. It can have to do with our time and energy as well, because I see those as resources. So there is something going on here where you are being called with the Mercury retrograde here to rethink this area of life, to revise, to revisit, to reflect on, to revitalize, to reinvent, to renegotiate. I'm trying to think of all the rewords and some of the ones that I haven't used yet. So it's like, maybe this is a time when, maybe if you haven't filed your taxes yet, for example, then it's the time when you're going through all your financials, right? And getting everything prepared for that. Or it's a time when you are reconsidering your banking setup, like changing accounts, switching banks, opening a savings account, closing something like that. Reflecting on how you're getting your basic needs met through the work that you do in the world, revamping your fee structure. If you're somebody that does work, like if you own your own business or what have you, maybe you're preparing to ask for a raise, and you're kind of trying to collect the support for that, and you're going to take it to your boss and go, these are all the reasons, right? Like during the Mercury retrograde, it can be a good time for kind of gathering that information to present, or your you could even just be like kind of rethinking your relationship to resources around the time of the Mercury retrograde as well, and considering how you might do that differently, and sort of what's not working for you, and how can you change that, and what information, who do you need to talk to about that. Maybe you need to enlist the help of like a financial planner, and so you're doing a bit of research on who's the best person, who's the best fit for you. There could be something like that going on as well. It could be, if you're a gardener, as a Taurus rising, you may be doing some gardening, and you may have to, like, maybe you're revamping something as it relates to that kind of thing in your own life. Like maybe you're rejigging your gardens, or you're, rethinking the way that's done in some way. So, okay, I'm going to leave that there, Taurus. We're going to move on next to Aries. Aries rising, Aries sun, Aries moon. But for Aries risings, this is happening in your third house. So all the Gemini is going on in your third house, including this Mercury retrograde. And so for you, Aries, this is a time for revisiting, rethinking, reinvigorating, reflecting on things that have to do with siblings, cousins, neighbors, teammates, peers, people in your immediate environment. It could have to do with themes around marketing, if that's something that pertains to you, commerce, education in some way. So travel, usually of a shorter distance variety, whether that's just like a commute or, you know, short trips that you take. So these are all themes that fall into the third house. Vehicles, tech, you know, may be implicated here as well. So there's so many different things this could be, right? I mean, you could, this, like a Mercury retrograde in the third house could even be like you haven't talked to a sibling in a while and you reconnect with a sibling or somebody who feels like a sibling to you in some way, or, you know, a cousin or that kind of thing. It could be you need to buy a new vehicle. So you're doing some research around what's the best option for you. Or the same thing applies for a piece of technology. Or you could be like learning a piece of technology that you've recently purchased, or you kind of need to go back and refresh or, remember certain things if you haven't used it in a while. This could be some kind of, like as it pertains to education, let's say, this could be having to redo something or maybe rethink your approach, or maybe like the revision of a lesson or an assignment or something like that, or course if you're somebody who's creating something like that. What else? It could be rethinking some short distance travel plans, or maybe going somewhere where you've been in the past and you're revisiting that place. It's the time to like take care of the maintenance that needs to be done on technology, on vehicles, that sort of thing, things with moving parts. So yeah, those are some real obvious things that I can think of in terms of how this is playing out for you. And definitely consider the context of the intro when you're thinking about, what is this about for me and where is it that I need to. One thing I will say that I haven't said yet, I did mention the sibling thing, but third house is the house very much of communication, right? So Mercury is at home in the third house. So watch for communication snafus. Just be real clear in your communications. Make sure that you're understanding the people that are sending you messages or trying to communicate with you in some way. Make sure you have a good grasp. And if there's any question about, am I understanding this right? Then get the clarification. Definitely get the clarification that you need. Okay, so I think that's good for you, Aries. And I'm going to move on to Pisces now. Excuse me. Take a sip of water before I hit the Pisces, the fishes. So Pisces, for you, all of the Gemini extravaganza is happening in your fourth house. And this includes the Mercury retrograde, right? That's starting on the 29th. Through to the 22nd of June. And of course there's shadow period on either end, but the actual retrograde is happening during that time. And so for you, Pisces, this has to do with your roots, your ancestry, your ancestral lineage, the legacy you have inherited. It has to do with your home, your family, your place of living, real estate, these sorts of things. And so for you, Pisces rising, Pisces sun, Pisces moon, but Pisces rising, this is fourth house specifically. Something, Mercury retrograde is asking you to revisit something here, or going to bring back something from the past, or maybe people from the past, or maybe it has you really reflecting on your ancestry in some way. Maybe there is taken it in a slightly different, direction. Maybe there are, maybe there's work you need to do on your home, for example, like renos, right? There's a Mercury retrograde word. It's like some kind of renovations. So, that could be something that's going on for you during this Mercury retrograde period. And, right now, we were just having this conversation on the weekend. Like the price of lumber is ridiculous. To do any kind of like work like that right now on your house costs a lot of money in the current climate. And so it could be like thinking or rethinking something that you were going to do, maybe putting it off, or maybe trying to find the best price on things. You could be doing some research as far as something relating to your home or to real estate right now, or research, like you could be doing research on your family lineage, for example, even. So those are some things. I'm trying to think if there's any other specific examples, potentials, that I could give you. There's generally some karmic stuff going on here, because there are eclipses happening right in this house for you, and in the 10th house across the sky. So this may be a time, in this eclipse window that we're in, and with Mercury retrograding, where there is some sort of karma that is being experienced, and there may be some kind of reflecting on things that happens as a result of that, and that's what the Mercury retrograde can really point to for you in some way. So I'm going to leave that there, Pisces. Please listen to the intro for further context, and I'm going to move on to Aquarius now, where Aquarius, for you, we've got Gemini in your 5th house, which means that's where the upcoming eclipse is happening on the 10th. That means that's where Venus is right now. Obviously, that's where the North Node is. That's where the Sun currently is. And this is where Mercury is about to station retrograde for a few weeks until the 22nd of June in this 5th house. So a lot going on in the 5th house during this time for you, Aquarius. And with Mercury retrograding there, it is a time where you're being asked to kind of really slow down and reflect on these themes and this area of life, and maybe do some research, collect some intel, have some conversations and communication. And for you, this all revolves around 5th house themes of children. So, which can include things like pregnancy and childbirth. It can include children that are your children, just children in general, these themes. It can also very much be about how you have fun in life, right? What brings you joy and enthusiasm. So this can be like hobbies and that sort of thing, sports, romance, anything you do, like creative pursuits. So those are all the 5th house themes. And so there's a lot going on in that area for you right now. And this Mercury retrograde is asking you to really, like I said, reflect on these themes, and to like let's bring it down to earth here and give you some real examples. So for example, if you are somebody who, like, maybe you're contemplating having children, and so there's conversations, with a partner, or if you're doing, like, in vitro or something like that, there's a lot of conversations that have to go on around this, or on that decision making process. And so, if that happens to be something that's going on for you, it's collect the research, do the research. Don't make snap decisions. Have the conversations and make sure that you're on the same page. Make sure that you're understanding, what needs to be understood. Make sure that you are communicating clearly. Collect the information you need. If there's something going on here with your kids, like, this could be a time where maybe there's some miscommunication with kids, or surrounding kids in some way. There could be, or your kid might be having some sort of communication, snafus. There could be, or like your kid has to redo something. Maybe they did something with regards to school and it kind of needs to be revamped or revisited. Um, there could be a rethinking of, what brings you pleasure in life, and what that looks like, and some, it could even be a revisiting of something that you used to do for fun that you haven't done in a while, and you're reconsidering, doing that again. um, this can be, um, revising some sort of creative project right now, like you're in the revision stage. It would be a good energy for that, for revising some artwork or creative project of some description. Would be good use of the Mercury retrograde energy. So I think, that gives you something to go on there. Definitely listen to the introduction, for the context, and to really get more clarification, right? Like, what's happening in my life in the Gemini area of my chart, and as Mercury is retrograding there through the fifth house, what is Mercury trying to draw my attention to? What is Mercury saying? Don't forget about this, or have you considered this? Or is this information correct, or do you need more information, or do you need to be clearer in your communication? All those things we talked about. So that's for you, Aquarius. I'm going to move to Capricorn now, where Capricorn, you have Mercury retrograding through your sixth house. That's where all the big Gemini stuff is happening. Right now for you is in the sixth house. And so the sixth house pertains to your health. It's issues around health and illness and well-being. It has to do with your daily routine, the work you do on the day-to-day, whether that's paid or unpaid, how you are in service. It sometimes pets play a role in the sixth house, subordinates. So these are all themes, but very much, about health and wellness and daily routine. And so for you, Capricorn, there may be some sort of health issues going on that are, like, there's maybe there's some reflecting on this, or there's a lot of information that needs to be gone through, or there is a revisiting of previous health issues in some way. There could be like a lack of clarity around some kind of like diagnosis or something like that, where you are waiting for information, or you need to dig a little deeper, you need to talk to some different people, or make sure that you're clear on what the doctor or the healthcare professional is saying to you. There could be like paperwork involved in some way. There could be a rethinking of your daily routine right now, like rescheduling things could be going on right now. Daily things. There could be some sort of like, okay, maybe you're considering getting a pet or another pet, so it's a time where you're researching that, or you're thinking about it. And if you are, say if you're adopting a pet, just make sure that you're clear on whatever the terms are. Make sure that you have a good, clear communication, like if, with the adoption center or the breeder or whatever, so there's not any surprises down the road. This could be like, you could have a pet that's having health issues, and so there's some back and forth that's going on with the vet, and some confusion around that. And so again, just be mindful of the communication. Take it slow and easy. Make sure you have all the details. Do the research. Revisit things. Reflect on them. Revise as necessary. Reconsider. All of those words. And you don't need to make any sort of snap judgments or decisions. And if you do have to do that, then just try to make sure, like I said, that you've got the information that you need, right? In order to do that. So, and so as like Mercury is like trying to get all the details sorted out so that we can launch into whatever that North Node in Gemini is launching us towards in the future, right? For our future sort of thing. So we talked about that a little bit in the intro. So don't skip the intro for sure, Capricorn. So, okay, we're going to move on to Sagittarius now, where we have Gemini Palooza happening in your 7th house. And so this includes the Mercury Retrograde, right? Which we're specifically addressing in this video. So, for you, Sag, Mercury retrograding through your 7th house between the 29th of May and the 22nd of June. And of course, leave room on either end, because there is, Mercury is in shadow at that point. But the actual retrograde is those dates that I just gave you. So what happens when Mercury retrogrades through our 7th house? Well, a few things, generally. There can be miscommunication with, like, in relationships. So between a partner or somebody who you're close to, like a close friend or family member, like one-to-one communications, right? Or business partners, there can be some miscommunication there, some confusion around communication. There can be, I just realized I forgot to plug my microphone in, so I hope this is loud enough. Anyway, there you go. Mercury's in shadow. In real life, you got it here. So anyway, but there can also be something around contracts and agreements that needs revising or revisiting. So if you have to sign some sort of a contract or draw up a contract or read a contract, or something like that around this time, then make sure that you're getting the details. Make sure that you're reading the fine print before you sign off on anything. And, when you are communicating with people on a one-to-one, just make sure that you are being clear and that the other person is understanding what you're meaning or what your intentions are, and vice versa, that you are understanding, like, don't react if something lands wrong with you. Like, ask for clarification first to make sure that you're understanding, right, correctly what the other person's intentions are, or what the other person is saying. And so that's pretty cut and dry, 7th house. It's really about relationships and contracts and agreements. And sometimes it can be about the people that we are in competition with as well. So, but that we know that we're in competition with, right? Not where people are kind of keeping secrets from us, or people are talking behind our back, and that sort of thing. Generally, this is more like who are our rivals and who are the rivals that we know are our rivals. So there can be things like that in the seventh house going on as well, but generally relationships. So, I think that's enough, Sag, to go on really in this scenario, and definitely listen, to the introduction for the context, and it will make things more clear for you. So we're going to move to Scorpio now. Scorpio, for you, this is happening in your eighth house. So Mercury is retrograding in your eighth house of other people's money, other people's resources in general, the resources that you share with other people, your intimate entanglements with other people, the skeletons in the closet is the eighth house, like meaning sort of your, the things kind of that we don't necessarily like to talk about all that much, except for maybe with people that are very close to us. It could be, eighth house can be about, our psychological wounding, and healing that goes along with that. The eighth house is sometimes, traditionally speaking, eighth house is sort of death and taxes, right? If you want to put it real simple. So, but it's that, and it doesn't necessarily mean like death in the true sense of the word. There can be some kind of an ending, a transformation that goes on when we have things happening in the eighth house. I'm very sensitive to this because I have a lot of eighth house energy in my own chart. So, it really irks me when astrologers talk about the eighth house in an insensitive way, or like it's all doom and gloom. So it's not easy. I'll put it to you straight, but there's a lot of power there if you understand it, and if you're able to work with it, and to acceptance is a big part of it, dealing with eighth house energy. So, and Scorpio, the eighth house is the natural home of Scorpio. So you're kind of in tune with these energies to begin with, and with Mercury retrograding here and a lot of transformation happening in relation to these themes, this can be about a rethinking of shared resources in some way. So resources that you share through other people, whether it be like clients, partners, your partner's money. This can have to do with mortgages, loans, taxes, insurance, inheritance, debt, bursaries, scholarships. All of those things fall into the eighth house of shared resources. And so there can be some kind of like review of these things. Like something that just pops into my head is like potentially, and I'm not saying this is going to happen in every case, it's a one-off, but it's something that popped into my head. It could be about like getting audited, and so you got to gather all the tax information. It could be about paperwork that needs to be done in the case of an inheritance, like a will. It could be drawing up a will, or revisiting some. If you already have a will, it could be going back and making sure that changes don't need to be made there. It can have to do with like maybe you've had some therapy for something in the past and it's been a while, and so there's a revisiting of that in some way. Are you rethinking that, or rethinking the need for that in some way as well? So revisions happening around that, eighth house sort of intimate entanglements, like I said, other people's resources. Make sure any communications around that are clear, are being, you are communicating clearly with other people or institutions involved, and that you are getting the proper information. I remember, I'm just going to give you a real quick story here. I remember way back, to make a long story short, I had switched jobs from teaching and I went to work for a healthcare agency. And it just so happened that my pension plan was compatible. So they moved, they were supposed to move the pension. And almost a year later, I found out that that hadn't happened. Anyways, so there was a lot of back and forth and, clarification that needed to happen. And in the long run, it actually turned out better for me. I won't go into the details of why, but so, it could be like something along those lines that goes on for you around this time. So, I think that's good, Scorpio. I'm going to leave that there for you. Listen to the intro for the context for certain. And we'll move to Libra now. So Libra, this Mercury retrograde is happening in your ninth house. And along with all the other Gemini energy, including an upcoming eclipse on June 10th, right? And there is something going on here around the themes of travel, usually like longer distance travel, foreign people and places, foreign cultures, learning, teaching, education, publishing, your worldview, your philosophy, and belief system, your strongly held kind of convictions, that sort of thing. This is all ninth house. And so there is something with the Mercury retrograde happening over these few weeks that's asking you to rethink, revisit, revise, reconsider, revamp, revitalize, something that has to do with those themes. So it could be like if you're somebody that's writing a thesis, for example, you're going to present your thesis for, your degree program. Then it's a time of maybe going back and doing revisions on something like that, or some kind of major project that you're working on to graduate your program, right? In some way. This can have to do with travel plans and like having to rethink those or reconsider or get clear on how that's going to work, rebook maybe. Make sure that you've got the information you need, you're having the proper conversations with the proper people about those things, that they're understanding your questions clearly and vice versa. It could be that you're it could be something you had planned to do like pre-COVID, for example. Now you're starting to rethink that again, or you're revisiting those plans again at this point. It could have something to do with that. It could have to do with, in the ninth house, Libra, it could have to do with like you're rethinking like, your philosophy in some way as well. And you may be getting information that's making you reconsider. There could be some kind of information exchange. If you are somebody who lives someplace where travel has opened up and you're planning on traveling and you are traveling, then it could be like delays and that kind of thing that go on as well. And, no doubt, I'm sure there's that possibility with as the world opens up post pandemic, in some places anyway. So, okay, Libra, I'm going to leave that there for you. I'm going to move to Virgo now. Virgo, for you, Virgo rising, Virgo sun, Virgo moon, but Virgo rising specifically, this is happening in your 10th house. And so all of the Gemini, the upcoming eclipse, and this Mercury retrograde is transpiring in your 10th house of your public life, of your public reputation, of your career, your worldly ambitions, the legacy you wish to leave, your relationship to authority. And so for you, Virgo, there is a time here with the Mercury retrograde when you're being asked to make sure, you've got all your T's crossed and your I's dotted. You may be like in relation to career or some kind of legacy project, um, to something, you know, more public that you're doing, um, rethinking that, revamping it, reconsidering it, um, where there may be some kind of like technology or communication issues that arise, that you need to spend some time working out the kinks, or just putting the finishing touches on in some way, you know. So, like, I mean, this one's a bit easier for me because I'm a Virgo rising. So, for example, in my own life, right, I'm launching a new website. So, there's a lot of tech pieces and there's a lot of writing, you know, communication, like that goes on around all of that. So, that's what's going on for me personally. This might be you are, if this is career related for you, there could be some rethinking of, you know, career direction even at this time. Or if you're like, maybe you're interviewing, you're doing some interviews around this time and you go back for second round of interviews. Or you could be rethinking a past career move, in some way as well. Somebody that you encountered in a past career or in your work in the past, comes back for some reason into your experience. So in general, like, be mindful that you're not rushing through these things, that you are, taking care of all the details. You know, you're tying up the loose ends at this time so that you're able to really launch into that, to what the future has to hold, right? In terms of the Gemini area of life, which is where the North Node is, which is where we have this upcoming solar eclipse, this big new beginning, this reset button that's being hit. So that's for you, Virgo. There's more I could say, but I think that gives you enough to go on. Really listen to the introduction as well for more context, rather than just this little snippet, because it will make things clearer for you. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to move to Leo now, where Leo, you have all this Gemini energy in your 11th house, including the Mercury Retrograde that's happening between May 29th and June 22nd. So for you, Leo, there is something going on here. It's a big thing around groups, friends, organizations, clubs, associations, alliances, right? Allies. This is 11th house. These are 11th house themes. And so there's like the potential for a fresh start in some way with this upcoming solar eclipse in Gemini in that 11th house for you. But prior to that, it's like Mercury is asking you to take a step back, to maybe review, to revisit, to reconsider, to rethink, you know, to maybe have some conversations. And if you're doing all those things, then you will be better prepared for what's to come. It may be a time when, like, something from the past that happened in relation to friends or groups, or alliances, you know, in some way, like larger networks even. This could be internet, people that you're connected to on the internet, comes back for, like, is revisited or needs to be reviewed or revamped or is revitalized in some way. Friendships from the past can come back. Conversations. Make sure, you know, if you're having conversations with friends around this time, that the communication is clear. You're being clear, you're understanding them clearly. Ask for clarification if it's required. You know, it could be a time of rethinking your alliances in some way. It could be a time of revisiting, like, your hopes and dreams for the future too, when we're talking 11th house, as well. And so just make sure that you take care of all the details, any details that need to be taken care of so that you can move forward. With more clarity, right? As Mercury stations direct in that 11th house for you, Leo. So that's pretty clear, I think. I'm going to leave it there for you. I'm going to direct you to the intro in case you haven't listened to that yet for more context. And I'm going to move on to, last but not least, in this case, we've got Cancer with all of this Gemini energy in your 12th house right now. So, and Mars happens to be in your first house right now, Cancer. So, with Gemini, all the Gemini activity in your 12th house, including a retrograde happening there, a Mercury retrograde happening in the 12th, there can be a lot going on in relation to health. I can see, the 12th house is a health house as well, just like the 6th house across the sky. It tends to, sometimes it has more to do with sort of like our spiritual and mental health. Or it can be that you're dealing with things that have to do with health that are more kind of like in private or in retreat in some way. Like you could be, the 12th house is what goes on behind closed doors. The 12th house is about wrapping things up, endings, losses. But it's how we spend time in solitude, recuperating sometimes, or maybe with others that are recuperating. Like this can be quite literally about places like spiritual retreat centers or hospitals or long-term care facilities or rehab facilities or prisons or anything like that. There could be something going on that's related to those institutions for you. And or there could be 12th house also deals, it used to be one of the things that was referred to was the house of our undoing, meaning it can be like how we sabotage ourselves, right? Our bad habits and things like that are not really out in the open, but they are sabotaging us. And sometimes we're not even consciously aware of those things. So with Mercury retrograding in this 12th house, this is a time for revisiting whichever of these themes pertains to you personally and your life. Mercury is saying, pay attention here. Make sure you've got all the information. Make sure you are understanding things correctly. Maybe you're rethinking some kind of bad habit, and you're trying to get a handle on that, and you need some information about that, or there's some communication that's happening around that right now. Maybe there is something coming to a close, and so there could be like information around that has to be dealt with, or if there's some kind of one of those facilities that I mentioned involved in some way, then there could be a lot of communication around that, or again, like information that needs to be collected and thought on. So just take it slow and easy. Make sure you're taking care of the details there, making sure that the communications are clear, and making sure that you're being honest with yourself is something I would say as well when we're talking about the 12th house here. And with Mars, like I started to say, with Mars in your first house, there could be something going on that's reflective of like your vitality, your health, your relationship to yourself in some way as well. And the 12th house is kind of laying the groundwork there for the action that's happening with Mars in your first house of self. So I hope that gives you enough to go on, Cancer. And if you have questions for me, don't hesitate to put them in the comments or to reach out, and I'm happy to address them for you. So listen to the intro for context, and I'm going to leave that there. I I set it to, I realized, I think when I was speaking to Taurus, if I recall correctly, I forgot to plug my microphone in for this video. So that just goes to show you Mercury retrograde in action. Mercury's slowing down right now. It is about to station over the next few days, and so there you go. Is me, and that's in my 10th house of public life. Here I am on a YouTube video and I forgot to plug the mic in. So I apologize for that. I have a pretty loud voice, so I'm going to trust that it's loud enough for you to hear it. And I will try to not make that mistake in the future. Okay, so thanks for your patience and take good care, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye for now.